Let's start with the big, broad question then. To what extent do you think anything will change? What will change? What won't change, do you think?
Currently, there's momentum that's been underway for the last couple of years as to the U.S. China commercial relationship. We often refer to it as the phase one of the trade deal, hopefully setting up well for phase two. So those things are going to continue. And we hope to emphasize that in the work that we do to support both U.S. and China in implementation there. What won't change is U.S. China tensions that we all know for the last 4 years have been high. And a new administration is not going to change the fundamental differences between the two governments.
Greg, what did you read into this move by Beijing to sanction these former Trump officials, 28 of them, including, as we mentioned, Mike Pompeo, just as President Joe Biden was giving his inauguration speech? The timing was curious. What does it signal to you, to someone who has and meets regularly with Chinese officials and has a sense of what the positioning here is?
I'd agree that the timing was unfortunate, given it's the first day of the new administration. However, it was also very clearly directed at the outgoing administration. So China's saying we're going to stand our ground, and I don't think it erases the possibility for a reset. I do think there's been plenty of signals that suggest a reset is possible. And of course, AmCham China and our member companies are going to do what we can to try to make that happen.
And what's your sense then, Greg, because as Tom was pointing out, you deal with regulators in China all the time. Is there a sense that there is appetite from the Chinese side for a reset?
David, I think the answer is yes. But it's a cautious expression of interest for a reset, because the reset needs to be mutual, right? It needs to come from both sides. We know that there is bipartisan support that's fairly hawkish in the U.S. versus the U.S.-China relationship. So we know there's challenges there, but China will probably do better with the new administration and a more traditional approach to diplomacy, and is ready, frankly, for the multilateralism that is likely to come from the Biden administration.
So if you had a wish list that you could send both to Zhongnanhai and the White House, what would be top two on that list?
Increased intellectual property protection, better alignment between policy and implementation that allows for national treatment and open market access for American business, fair rules on technology transfer, more transparency in subsidies. And then, of course, we want the phase one trade deal to go well so that the things I just spoke to can be more vigorously addressed in phase two. But nobody's going to talk about phase two if phase one doesn't meet its goals.
Greg, there's a sense amongst many watching the geopolitics and the change in the administration in the US that the focus on human rights will only increase with Joe Biden, and particularly with his nominee for Secretary of State Blinken. And of course, he just yesterday agreed with Mike Pompeo around the designation of the term genocide for the crackdown that we've seen in Xinjiang by Chinese authorities. Is it time for your members to cut all ties to Xinjiang?
It's time for our members, and it's always been time for our members, to make sure that we operate in legal, moral, and ethical fashion. We don't, however, have the resources to adjudicate or legislate how sovereign governments work together, because, as we know, they have diametrically opposing views and statements of the issues and the facts. And we have no way really to work through those. What we do is comply. So when there's a a clear path for us to be compliant in how we do our business, that's what we do.
Is that path a bit muddled right now? Because you have competing claims, obviously. You have what you have the sanction, of course, as a function of the executive orders of former President Donald Trump. And of course, you also have China coming in, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and they can basically said, and they told the Chinese companies, you know, we will provide you some shelter in case you are in the middle of those sanctions. Where does that leave American companies in China? Who do you follow?
Well, we follow the law where we operate our business. So we have to follow the law in both the U.S. and China. And yeah, that becomes difficult sometimes because those laws can conflict. So, you know, how we find ourselves, you know, meeting those compliance challenges is never-ending work. And we do our best, and we talk to the regulators and say, look, I'd love to do what you want me to do, but that's going to put me at risk of, you know, violating this or that regulation. And we just, you know, continue that dialogue and be open and honest about what our challenges are, and then ask them to help us get involved with solutions.